Hi everyone, this is Helloangel.design. Today I'm going to show you how to make this cute dress. It's so beautiful. You can see this dress on Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook, and you'll be wondering how should I make mine. And today I'm going to show you how to achieve that success, how to make that dress for your kids or loved ones. You can see how it is. The sleeve is in between the dress. It's very beautiful. It's step-by-step tutorial and it's easy to make. I top stitch around the waistline. And this is the back. It's a button down back. If you are going to put a zipper, you can also do the same. This is how it is once you have done making your own dress. You can make a pleat or a gathered skirt. If my tutorial has been helpful, thumbs up. Make a comment down below if you have any question. Please don't forget to subscribe if you haven't. If you're just stopping by, thank you so much for watching. And let's get started. Going to show you how you can cut your pattern paper and so that you can place it on your fabric and then cut it out. This is my sleeve. I'm using this yellow fabric for the sleeve, so it's going to be in between this dress that we are making today. So my pattern paper that I use for this dress is for 2 to 3 years old child. This is my front pattern paper and this is my back pattern paper. What you're going to do, make sure to trace your pattern paper on a different paper so that you have 2 copies, so that when you cut one out, you use the second one to cut your lining. What you're going to do, you take your measuring tape or your ruler, place it at the shoulder seam of your pattern paper. From the shoulder seam, I'm going to measure 1¼ inch. You can measure 3 centimeters or 3½ centimeters. So this is my 1¼ inch. This is the back pattern paper. You take your ruler. This is my ruler. Place it at the shoulder seam. From that 1¼ inch that you measure, just connect it all the way down. So you connect it all the way down like this. Once you have done that, you take your scissors, go ahead and cut it out. Remember to write the back like this, and you also write the back so that when you cut out your pattern paper, you don't mix them up. Once you have done that, then you take your front pattern paper, you do the same thing. Measure inside 1¼ inch or 3 centimeters or 3.5 centimeters. Once you measure inside, take your ruler, place it at the shoulder seam, go ahead and connect it down. You just connect it down like this. So you also write front pattern paper, you write front. So you know that this is the front, this is the front, because when we cut it into pieces, the both front and back will be into pieces. So you don't want to make the mistake that you're joining the front to the back and the back you place it on the front. So make sure that you write front and then you write back, so that when you are cutting your fabric, you know that this is the back pattern paper and this is the front pattern paper. Once you cut it out, place it on your fabric. You cut 2 pieces for the back, you cut 2 pieces. For the front, you put this side on fold. When you're cutting out your fabric, make sure to put it on fold. And for this side, you cut it 2 pieces. And when you're done that, make sure to also cut your lining. When you're cutting your lining, you're not going to cut it into pieces. You just place your pattern paper on your fabric, go ahead and cut it out. Place your pattern paper on your fabric, go ahead and cut the front pattern paper on fold. So this is how I cut my fabric. Before we put the shoulder seam together, what you're going to do, take your marker. You can see this is my marker. So this is the front of my pattern paper in my fabric. I will remove the pin. I will take my marker so that I know that this is the front. You don't want to make that mistake. And then you turn it and you take your marker, make sure to mark it, and you know that this is the front. So for the back, don't mark it so that you know that that is the back dress. So I'm just marking it all over again So you see the way I mark it. I will remove the back right now, pattern paper, and then you open your fabric and you take the front, you put it on top of each other. You're going to stitch the shoulder seam, and you take the second pieces, put it on top of each other, you stitch the shoulder seam. You can either go ahead and pin that in place, just go ahead, stitch the both shoulder seam of this dress that we are making today. I will put this aside, and this is the front, and I will also go ahead and do the same thing. I will take my marker and I will just give it a mark so that I know that this is the front. So I will open it like this, and this is the back. I will remove my pins. So I will take the back, put it on top of each other, go ahead and stitch the both shoulder seam, take the other side, put it on top of each other, go ahead and stitch the shoulder seam. You just stitch them together. Once you have done that, take it to your ironing board and press the seam apart. So go ahead and top stitch. I have stitched the both shoulder seam. This is how it is, and I also stitch on the other side. This is how it is. So what you're going to do, you take this part on your top, you put it aside, and you take this part. This will be where we are going to attach our sleeve. So before we do that, what you're going to do, you take your sleeve. So this is my sleeve. I just pin it all around. So I cut 4 pieces of my sleeve. I'm going to join them together. So it's like I'm lining the sleeve. What I'm going to do, I will take it to my sewing machine and I will just top stitch all the way around. Once I have done that, I will turn it inside out, give it a good press. And this side of the sleeve, I'm going to set my sewing machine to the longest stitch, and I will stitch it all the way down because we are going to gather this sleeve. And then you take the second pieces, you repeat the same process. So go ahead and stitch your sleeve. I have stitched my sleeve. This is how it is. I turn it inside out, give it a good press, and this is my gather stitch thread. Before we gather the sleeve on this top dress that we are making, so I just want to mention a few things that I almost forgot. This is my pattern paper. So we cut the pattern paper into 2. What you're going to do when you place it on your fabric, make sure to add seam allowance, 1 centimeter seam allowance on this side, 1 centimeter seam allowance in between the pattern paper when you're cutting your fabric. Add 1 centimeter seam allowance on the shoulder, on the armhole, side seam, and the bottom. So it depends on the seam allowance that you add on your fabric. That's the same seam allowance that you're going to use to stitch it. I just want to mention that. So you just take your sleeve, put them together, and this is the mid part. What you're going to do, this is the armhole side, and this is also the armhole side of this dress that you are making. This is the in between the dress that we are making. Put them together, the mid part and the shoulder seam, put them together. You just go ahead and pin that in place. And then once you have done that, you take the end of your sleeve from the waistline, measure inside, depends on the seam allowance that you leave, measure inside that 1 centimeter or ½ an inch. The raw edges of your sleeve, make sure it's pointing out, don't point it in, point it out. Then take your pin, pin that in place. And then you do the same thing on this other side. The end of your top that you're making, measure inside ½ an inch, 1 centimeter, depends on the seam allowance that you add to your top. Point the sleeve out, the raw edges, make sure it's pointing out. Take your pin, pin that in place. So what you're going to do, you're going to gather this side of your sleeve on this side of the top. You gather this side of your sleeve on this side of the top. You repeat the same process on this side. So just go ahead and start pulling your thread. You just keep pulling it like that. And then once you have done gathering your sleeve, go ahead, pin them all around. I have pinned my sleeve in place. This is how it is. The next thing that you have to do, take it to your sewing machine, give it a top stitch all the way down. When you're stitching, make sure that your stitches is not up to 1 centimeter. When you place the second pieces on top of it, then you can top stitch with 1 centimeter. Once you have done stitching, remove your gather stitch thread. The next thing that you have to do, you take your lining, put them together, make sure both front fabric are facing each other. Go ahead and stitch the bow shoulder seam with 1 centimeter seam allowance. So go ahead and top stitch. I have stitched my sleeve. This is how it looks. The next thing that you have to do, you open the remaining pieces of your front bodice. This is the front, while this is the back. And then you take your fabric where the sleeve is. Make sure that the both front pieces are toe matched and the back are toe matched. So this is my front and this is the front of my bodice. So I'm going to put them together, both shoulders seam together first. I will just pin that in place and make sure both shoulder seam are matched. And then you take at the end of your top bodice, that is the waistline, you pick the second pieces, you put them together, go ahead and pin that in place. And then you come to the other side and you will repeat the same process, pin that in place. So what you're going to do, you're going to pin them all around, and then you will come to this other side, you repeat the same process. Go ahead and pin them in place. I have pinned them together. The next thing that you have to do, take it to your sewing machine, give it a top stitch all the way down. My seam allowance is 1 centimeter. Once you have done that, trim a little bit out from your seam allowance, snip around the curved edge, take it to your ironing board and give it a good press. So go ahead and top stitch. I have stitched my top. This is how it looks right now. You can see how beautiful that is. The sleeve in between this top will be falling on the child's shoulder. The next thing that we have to do, we are going to place our lining on top of it and top stitch. Before we do that, you fold your sleeve like this in between the shoulder, because we are going to stitch around the armhole and the neckline. You don't want to be stitching and your needle is stitching your sleeve also, so you don't want that to happen. You just fold it inside and pin that in place like this, the way I'm doing it right now. So once you have done that, you can now place your lining on top of it and pin them all around. You can see how that is. Go ahead and do the same on this other side. Once you have done that, you just pick your lining, put it on top of each other like this. You can pin around the both armhole, neckline, and the center back. So go ahead and pin them all around. I have pinned around the armhole, neckline, and the center back. The next thing that you have to do, take it to your sewing machine, stitch around the both armhole, neckline, and the center back. My seam allowance is 1 centimeter. Once you have done stitching, snip around the armhole curve, neckline, and the center back. Remember to take it to your ironing board and give it a good press. So go ahead and top stitch. I have turned my dress inside out. This is how it is. Make sure to iron your dress. This is how mine look right now. The next thing that we have to do, you take your skirt, put them together, make sure both front fabric are facing each other. So what you're going to do, you can see that I didn't pin from the beginning. I start from here. So you're going to take a measurement of 2.5 inches or 6.5 centimeter. So you measure it all the way down, place a pin right here. This is my pin, and then you can pin the rest all the way down. Once you have done that, take it to your sewing machine, give it a top stitch all the way down. My seam allowance is 1 centimeter. Once you have done that, also go ahead and hem your skirt. Fold inside 1 centimeter, fold inside 2 centimeter. Go ahead and top stitch all around. So go ahead and stitch that in place. I have stitched my skirt. I stitched the center back, and I have also hemmed my skirt. This is how it is. And I take it to my ironing board and I give it a good press, and I also overlock the raw edges. The next thing that you have to do, cut a piece of fabric. The width of my piece of fabric is 3 centimeter. Make sure to fold it into 2 when you measure it. So when you measure it, when you fold it into 2, you measure 3 centimeter. When you just cut a piece of fabric without not folding into 2, you cut 6 centimeter. So what you're going to do, place it at the top like this. You're going to pin it all around. This is where we are attaching our buttonhole also. You just pin them all around like this. Once you have done pinning, this is how it will look. Take it to your sewing machine, give it a top stitch all the way down. Once you have done that, this point right here, make sure to take your scissors, just cut it very close to your stitch thread, and then take it to your ironing board and give it a good press. Once you iron your skirt, set your sewing machine to the longest stitch. We are going to gather this skirt. You just stitch it all around, and then we cannot gather it on our top dress. So go ahead and top stitch. I have stitched it together. This is how it is. And I overlock the raw edges, and I snip very close to my stitch thread. This is how it will look. Take it to an ironing board, fold it into 2 like this. You can see how it is folded into 2, and then it will look like this. So what we are going to do, we are going to put the both skirt together and know the mid part of this skirt. I will just put them together like this. Then I will open it again. And then I will take my top dress, I will do the same thing. So this is how it is right now. What you're going to do, this is the front of my top, and I'm going to put them together like this. Both mid parts are facing each other. So once you have done that, then you take your center back. So I will remove this pin. This is my center back. Just pick your skirt the way it is. This is the center back where the buttonhole is going to be. Just pick it like this. Put them together. You can see that it's folded inside. Put them together like this. And then you take the other side of the center back. This is the other side of the center back. This is open, it's not folded inside. Also go ahead and pin that in place like this. So once you have pinned them like this in place, just go ahead and gather it on the top dress. So you just pick your thread, you just keep pulling it all around. Once you have done that, go ahead and pin your skirt in place. I have pinned my skirt in place. This is how it is. I will take it to my sewing machine and top stitch all around. Once you have done that, remove all your gather stitch thread. Take it to your overlocker, overlock the raw edges, or use zigzag to overlock the raw edges. So go ahead and top stitch. This is the final look of my dress. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't. Make a comment down below if you have any questions. I just top stitch around the waistline, and this is the back. I have started stitching my buttons. I haven't finished stitching them yet. I stitched my buttonhole. This is how it is once you have done making. It's a beautiful dress. It's a step-by-step tutorial. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't. Subscription is free, and have a blessed day. Bye.